Charles Oliveira is about to destroy Max Holloway's career, and the way he's training right now is absolutely terrifying. We're talking about a man possessed, drilling submissions with the intensity of someone who knows this fight determines everything. You can see it in his eyes during these training clips. This isn't the same Charles who got dropped by Islam Makhachev or overwhelmed by Arman Tsarukyan. This is a completely different animal, and Max Holloway has no idea what's coming for him. Here's what nobody's talking about. While everyone's focused on the BMF belt and the storylines, Charles is quietly transforming his entire approach to fighting. His coaches have completely revamped his strategy after those back-to-back losses. Instead of the wild, reckless Charles who used to get dropped in every fight, we're seeing a calculated assassin who's wrestling earlier, controlling positions and picking his spots. The old Charles would throw caution to the wind and hope his chin held up. This new version. He's not giving Max any opportunities to land those volume combinations that made him famous at featherweight.
No, gatito, gato não está mais gordo. Fala pra ele, gato, agora não. Gordo não mais. Eu gordo não.
But here's where it gets absolutely wild. Max Holloway thinks he's fighting the same Charles Oliveira who got hurt in their first encounter. That injury stoppage back in the day, it's created this false narrative that Max had Charles figured out. But listen to this. That fight lasted barely any time before the injury happened. We never got to see what would have unfolded once Charles started threatening with submissions or landing his own heavy shots. Max is walking into this rematch with overconfidence based on an incomplete data set, and that's exactly what Charles is counting on.
I know you said you wanted this fight, but when the whole thing happened with Ilia Topuria, was any part of you hoping you would get the call for this interim fight instead?
It is what it is, you know. I want to get an undisputed title. They came with me with Charles for the BMF. We're here now.
And what is the unfinished business for you? Because you obviously were the winner of the first fight, even though it ended strangely.
I mean, you know, he had his injury, so at the end of the day, we get to figure out how it goes come March 7th. I'm just excited, man. He's a legend of the sport. He deserves this moment, and I can't wait to go out there and give it to him.
Now get this part, because this is where the mental warfare gets fascinating. During the press conference, when reporters kept bringing up their previous encounter, Charles shut it down immediately. Not because he's avoiding the topic, but because he knows something Max doesn't. Charles has studied every second of Max's recent fights at lightweight, and he's identified a massive weakness. Max's defensive wrestling isn't nearly as sharp as his striking defense. At featherweight, Max could rely on his cardio and volume to overwhelm smaller opponents. But at lightweight, against a submission specialist who's now wrestling smarter, that's a completely different nightmare.
We all focus on this March. All I know is it's going to be a great fight on March.
And again, for Charles, after the fight with Ilia, a lot of people counting you out, saying you're done, you come back, get a great win against Gamrot. If you beat Max Holloway here, do you think we need to start talking about you as a title contender once more?
E depois da tua luta contra o Ilia, muita gente te chegou a desconsiderar, te tirou do páreo, mas você foi lá. Uma grande vitória no Rio de Janeiro, tremenda vitória contra o Matheus Gamrot. Uma vitória contra o Max Holloway. Você acha que o pessoal começa a te ver de novo no páreo para ser de campeão?
Como você me veio falando, o Leão ferido ainda continua sendo um leão, ainda tô no jogo, nada mudou. Eu acabei de vir uma grande vitória e com certeza eu sempre foco na minha próxima luta. O foco total agora é Max Holloway e aí, se Deus abençoar e for da vontade dele eu passar, com certeza por que não ser o próximo do título.
As I said, a wounded lion is still a lion. All I'm focused on is on a win. I'm focused on the next fight and to win. All I want now is to fight Max Holloway and get a fight. And if God willing, if that's his wish, I'm gonna get a shot at the title after getting him.
And here's the kicker that's flying under everyone's radar. Charles's team has been studying Max's fights with Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje obsessively. They've noticed that when Max gets taken down or pressed against the fence, he doesn't have the same scrambling ability he had at featherweight. The extra weight class is affecting his mobility in ways that most analysts aren't picking up on. Charles's coaches have specifically designed this entire camp around exploiting those moments when Max is out of his comfort zone. We're talking about drilling takedown setups off of Max's favorite striking combinations.
This is the fifth BMF fight now. You beat in 3 of them. You and Charles enter this matchup with the most combined wins in the UFC of any fight in UFC history. In your opinion, is this the most BMF-worthy fight we've had yet?
For sure. I can't wait. We have some unfinished business from 11 years ago, so we get to go out there and finally figure it out.
I know you said you wanted this fight, but when the whole thing happened with Ilia Topuria, was any part of you hoping you would get the call for this interim fight instead?
It is what it is. I want to get an undisputed title.
But wait, it gets even more strategic than that. While Max is preparing for the classic Charles Oliveira experience, expecting to get hurt and survive those dangerous moments, Charles is planning something completely different. His recent performances show a fighter who's not just swinging for the fences anymore. He's setting traps. He's using his striking to set up his grappling, and his grappling to create better striking opportunities. Max's entire game plan is probably built around weathering early storms and taking over with volume in the later rounds. But what happens when Charles doesn't give him those early fireworks to survive?
Considered the greatest of all time. I'm excited and honored to share the octagon with her, but when you're the best in the world, you're the best in the world, and right now, I'm the best in the world.
The last time Amanda fought an Olympic judo medalist, it was about as perfect a performance as...
Bronze medalist.
Bronze medalist.
Just a reminder.
Is that a storyline that you've been thinking about, or is that just something the fans can latch on?
Hey, listen, the only thing Rhonda and I have in common is that we're blonde and we both did judo at one point. That's where it starts and stops. I'm a completely different fighter, I'm a completely different person, and on January 24th, I'm gonna go out and show that.
You are the reigning champion, but Amanda has her 2 belts in front of her. Do you care about that at all, or are we just looking
I love
into
it. Does that mean I get 3 belts? What's that mean?
Here's what's really insane about this matchup. Everyone's praising both fighters for being respectful and professional, but that's actually working in Charles's favor psychologically. Max thrives on emotional fights where he can use his warrior mentality to push through adversity. Against guys like Leonard Garcia or Ricardo Lamas, Max could tap into that dog mentality and overwhelm opponents with pure heart, but Charles isn't giving him any emotional fuel to burn. This respectful, business-like approach is forcing Max to fight a more technical, calculated fight, which plays directly into Charles's evolved skill set.
Charles Oliveira has kind of played with the sliders a little bit. Bro's twinging up his build a little bit in 2K. He's taken off some power and focused more on his wrestling. We're seeing him go more to offensive, straight up wrestling against the fence, against Michael Chandler, against Mateus Gamrot, even against Ilia Topuria. This is now what he's trying to do. Maybe because of the matchups they're throwing at him, or more because he wants to protect his chin and he wants to get into the grappling straight away. Whatever it is, we're not seeing Charles Oliveira really rock people that badly anymore and, win via his striking. He's still super dangerous. He's got good leg kick defense. I think that's a very underrated part of his game that will work well against Max Holloway. He's got a nasty right hand. I do think he's going to blast Max at some point with his right hand. Like, I just know my boy Max is getting dropped at some point with a fucking straight right, and he's going to almost get submitted and then kind of scramble.
Now here's something that should terrify Max's team. Charles's submission game has reached a level that's honestly unfair at this point. We're not just talking about opportunistic submissions when opponents make mistakes. Charles is now creating submission opportunities from positions where most fighters can't even threaten. His back control has become so sophisticated that even elite grapplers are getting finished. Max's ground game, while improved, is still primarily defensive. He's focused on surviving and getting back to his feet, not on preventing elite-level submission sequences from even starting.
Max Holloway wins this by decision. I think he's going to have more output. I think he's going to be a little bit quicker on the feet. I think he's just quicker and sharper, less damaged. I think that he's going to be able to touch Charles Oliveira to the body really well. I think that he's going to be able to land like step-in knees, elbows in close. I think he's going to land his 1-2. And I think that he's also going to be able to just throw in combination and just rack up numbers against Charles Oliveira. And his defense has improved. His chin has gotten worse.
And listen to this detail that's going to matter huge in this fight. Charles has been working specifically on his cardio and pacing after those recent setbacks. His team identified that he was burning too much energy early in fights, leaving him vulnerable in later rounds. But now, he's training with a completely different energy management system. While Max is expecting to take over in rounds 4 and 5 like he did against Calvin Kattar or Yair Rodriguez, Charles is going to be just as fresh, just as dangerous, maybe even more dangerous as the fight progresses and Max's defensive reactions slow down.
Saturday was about the homecoming for Charles Oliveira, undefeated. I think it's 18-0, 7-0 in the UFC, fighting in Brazil, and putting himself now once again in line for a big fight. Who does he want? He wants Max Holloway. White House, aloha. Everyone wants to fight on the White House card. Heck, after today, I want to fight on the White House card. I'm just kidding. Aloha. And Max was watching. He was watching. Do we have that clip? I don't remember if we have that clip. No, we don't have that clip. Oh no, we do have that clip. It's on the list here. Oh, okay. Anyway, Max was watching, and he said they fought. There actually seemed to be like a tiny bit of bad blood, I feel like, because they fought back in Saskatchewan back in the day, and I feel like he insinuated some stuff. Anyway, I think we all kind of agreed that was the fight to make after the Topuria fight. Now he gets a win. Now his stock is back up, and it feels like the proper fight to make for both. BMF.
But here's the part that's absolutely wild. The BMF title situation is actually creating a false sense of security for Max. Everyone's treating this like a fun, exhibition-style fight between two respected veterans. But Charles is treating this like a title eliminator, because in his mind it basically is. A win over Max Holloway, especially a dominant win, puts him right back in the conversation with Islam Makhachev and the top of the division. Max might be viewing this as a stepping stone back to title contention, but Charles is viewing this as his last shot at proving he's still elite level.
There it is. Even Dustin agrees. Charles versus Max for the BMF is a great fight to make. Well, thank you, Dustin. There was even another speaking of Ilya, there was another really interesting thing that I saw. Every person who fights Ilya, everyone, always wonders how people will respond, or whether these people are over the hill, past their prime, washed up. Is the win as impressive as we think it is? It seems like every single person that he fights in their...
Here's what's going to shock people about this fight. When Charles gets his hands on Max, whether it's against the fence or on the ground, Max's famous recovery ability isn't going to matter. You can recover from getting rocked on the feet. You can't recover from a perfectly executed rear naked choke or arm triangle. Charles's submission sequences are so fluid now that by the time opponents realize they're in danger, it's already too late. Max has never faced submission pressure at this level, especially not from someone who can also hurt him on the feet.
Versus Max, guys, I think we're at that point, right? Like, I think we can come out and announce this now. I'm assuming that Charles Oliveira, when he gets done on Saturday, he calls out Max and he asks him to put up the belt. By the way, which is an important distinction to make. Colby Covington fought George Masvidal. It was personal. It was Vegas. It was main event. George was champion. We, Team Colby, assumed it was for the belt. We win the fight. We don't get the belt. I mean, I'm just sharing for you. It is important for a smart veteran like Charles to make the distinction and call for the belt. It's important when Max responds that we're all clear that it's for the belt.
And get this final detail that's going to determine everything. Charles's recent training footage shows him working extensively on his takedown defense, not because he's afraid of Max's wrestling, but because he wants to choose when and where the grappling exchanges happen. He's not going to be a sitting duck on the feet, but he's also not going to let Max dictate the pace and distance for 25 minutes. The moment Max starts settling into his rhythm, starts finding his range with those long combinations, Charles is going to change levels and drag this fight into deep waters where Max has never had to swim.
I only bring that to you because Max happened to be live. Max was doing a live stream. He's in front of the world when he gets hit with this information. His phone's going off, and Max didn't watch the fight. He was doing this damn live stream. Anyway. So we get these texts, his phone's lighting up. Hey, you've been called out, and it's for the title. He accepts quickly. But he does say, we're going to do it on my terms. And then he laid out what his terms were. which is you'll do it in Vegas or somewhere else, not Rio. So I just want to make sure that you guys understand this, because then I read an article on this, and the article, by the tone of it and my interpretation, was a little bit misleading. It sounded like, Max wasn't sure and he was thinking it over. That's not what happened. I saw the live stream. He very clearly accepted this challenge. He then went on to just add, and then I fought out of town. I fought Ilya over here, and I did the King of Rio thing and got through it, but I'm not going back. We're going to fight somewhere else, and he suggested Las Vegas.
So there you have it. While everyone's expecting a classic back-and-forth war between two legends, Charles Oliveira is about to put on a grappling clinic that reminds the entire MMA world why he was lightweight champion in the first place. Max's striking volume and cardio advantages mean nothing if he's spending half the fight defending submissions and getting controlled against the fence. This isn't going to be the competitive barn burner people are expecting. This is going to be a systematic breakdown of a striker by a submission specialist who's evolved into the most complete version of himself. So here's my question for you. Drop it in the comments. Do you think Max's striking can keep Charles at bay for 5 full rounds? Or is this the night Charles proves he's still the most dangerous lightweight on the planet? If this breakdown opened your eyes to what's really going to happen in this fight, smash that like button, subscribe for more fight analysis, and hit the notification bell because this card is stacked with potential upsets. I'll see you in the next one.
Called out. They don't do the calling. Now that makes me very curious. What's up with these two guys? I've known Max for his entire career. In fact, fought on a card with Max, and it was either his debut or it was his second ever fight. So when I tell you I knew him, that's the day I met him. So when I tell you I knew him his entire UFC career, this is a literal statement. He's awesome. I think you guys know that. I mean, he's a wonderful guy, is my point. They're not all. You get disappointed plenty of times. Max is a wonderful guy, but you guys know that. I'm just getting to know Charles on a personal level. He came over here, did an interview that we brought to you. He's a wonderful guy. They're not all. So when you have two baby faces, when you have two good guys, two wonderful guys, when are you going to call a guy wonderful, by the way? I don't know if I've ever done. You got two wonderful guys. Why do they not get along? What is their problem with each other? What really happened between these two? And that is not...
Now let's talk about something that's going to completely change how you view this fight. Charles's coaches have been studying the tape from Max's war with Alexander Volkanovski, and they've identified something crucial that nobody's discussing. Every time Max got pressured to the fence in those title fights, his output dropped significantly. Not because he was tired, but because his striking system is built around having space to work. Charles's team has been drilling fence work obsessively, specifically focusing on how to cut off Max's angles and force him into that uncomfortable pocket where his volume striking becomes ineffective. But here's where this gets absolutely diabolical. While Max has been working on his takedown defense, which everyone expected, Charles has been perfecting something completely different. He's been drilling what his team calls submission entries from striking range. Instead of the traditional shoot for a takedown, get to the ground, then work for submissions, Charles is now threatening submissions during the transition phases. We're talking about guillotine attempts off of Max's jab, arm drag entries when Max throws his famous combinations. Max's entire defensive system is built around separate phases: striking defense, then wrestling defense, then submission defense. Charles is blending all three phases into one seamless attack system. And listen to this detail that's going to be massive in this fight. Max's legendary cardio has been tested at lightweight exactly twice, against Dustin Catter and Justin Geethge. Both times, we saw subtle differences in his pace and recovery compared to his featherweight performances. But here's what nobody caught. Both Dustin and Justin are primarily strikers who were content to stand and trade with Max. They weren't forcing him to constantly defend takedowns, fight off submission attempts, and carry extra weight from top control. Charles is going to make Max work in ways that even his legendary cardio system hasn't been tested for at this weight class. Now here's something that should absolutely terrify Max's corner. Charles's recent sparring footage shows him working with southpaw specialists, and Max is an orthodox fighter who's historically had more trouble with southpaws than he admits. Remember his fights with guys like Jose Aldo in the second encounter. When southpaws can establish their rhythm and create awkward angles, Max's volume system gets disrupted. Charles might not be primarily a southpaw, but he switches stances fluidly, and his team has clearly identified this as a way to break Max's timing and create openings for takedown entries. But wait, there's another layer to this that's absolutely brilliant. Charles's team has been studying not just Max's losses, but his close rounds in fights he won. They've identified that Max's defensive reactions become more predictable when he's under sustained pressure. In the later rounds against guys like Brian Ortega or Calvin Kattar, you can see Max defaulting to certain defensive patterns when he's tired. Charles's coaches have been drilling specific attack sequences designed to exploit those predictable defensive reactions. We're talking about setting up submissions based on how Max instinctively reacts when he's defending takedowns in rounds 4 and 5. Here's what's really insane about Charles's mental preparation for this fight. His sports psychologist has been working with him on something called controlled aggression. The old Charles would get emotional and rush for finishes, leaving himself open to counters. But this version of Charles is learning to maintain that killer instinct while staying technically sound. Max's entire career has been built on outlasting guys who burn themselves out trying to finish him early. But what happens when Charles maintains that finishing threat for all 25 minutes without burning himself out? And get this part, because this is where the experience factor becomes crucial. Charles has been in more title fights and high-pressure situations recently than Max has. While Max was defending his featherweight title years ago, Charles was just hitting his prime and learning how to handle championship pressure. The Charles who lost to Islam and Arman learned valuable lessons about pacing, game planning, and mental preparation that Max hasn't had to learn yet at lightweight. Max's lightweight experience consists of beating aging legends and losing to the current elite. Charles's recent experience is all about learning from losses to current elite competition. Now here's a technical detail that's going to matter huge. Charles's jiu-jitsu coach has been working with him on what they call submission chains from inferior positions. Even if Max successfully defends the initial takedown attempt, even if he gets back to his feet, Charles has been drilling how to threaten submissions during those scrambles. Max's scrambling game is good, but it's designed around getting back to his feet, not around defending submission attempts during the scramble itself. Charles is turning every grappling exchange into multiple submission opportunities. But here's what's absolutely wild about the timing of this fight. Charles is hitting this rematch at the perfect stage of his career evolution. He's old enough to have learned from his mistakes, experienced enough to handle the pressure, but still young enough to be at his physical peak. Max, on the other hand, is dealing with the accumulated damage from wars at featherweight, the adjustment period to lightweight, and the pressure of proving he belongs at this weight class. Charles is fighting to reclaim his spot at the top. Max is fighting to establish that he ever belonged there in the first place. Here's something that's flying completely under the radar. Charles's conditioning coach has implemented a training system specifically designed around Max's fighting style. Instead of just general cardio work, Charles has been training his cardio while defending takedowns, while working from bottom position, while maintaining top control. Max's cardio has always been tested in striking exchanges. But Charles is going to force Max to use his cardio in grappling situations where Max is less efficient, where he burns more energy for less effective output. And listen to this detail about the mental warfare aspect. Charles has been completely silent about his specific game plan, not because he doesn't have one, but because he knows exactly what he's going to do and doesn't want to give Max's team any hints. Every interview, every press conference, Charles gives generic answers about respecting Max and being ready for a war. But his training footage tells a completely different story. This is a man who's been preparing for one specific opponent with surgical precision. Now here's where the stylistic matchup becomes absolutely fascinating. Max's entire striking system is built around entries and exits, getting in range to land combinations, then getting out before opponents can counter. But Charles's submission game eliminates the exit phase. Once Charles gets his hands on Max, whether it's a collar tie, an underhook, or a grip on Max's wrist, Max can't just step back and reset. He has to actively fight to break the grip, and every second he spends fighting grips is a second he's not striking, not controlling distance, not implementing his game plan. But here's the part that's going to shock everyone watching this fight. When Charles hurts Max, and he will hurt Max at some point, Max's famous recovery system isn't going to work the same way at lightweight. At featherweight, Max could take a step back, use his reach advantage, and recover while still being offensive. At lightweight, against a longer, stronger opponent like Charles, getting hurt means getting pressured immediately. Charles isn't going to give Max space to recover like smaller featherweights did. He's going to smell blood and drag Max into deep water immediately. Here's what's really brilliant about Charles's approach to this rematch. He's not trying to prove he's better than Max at striking. He's not trying to out-tough Max in a war. He's simply going to impose his will in areas where Max has no answer. Max can't submit Charles. Max can't control Charles on the ground. Max's path to victory requires keeping this fight in one specific area, striking range, for 25 straight minutes. Charles's path to victory just requires getting this fight to his world once, maybe twice, and it's over. And get this final psychological element that's going to play a massive role. Max is used to being the hunter, the guy who breaks opponents down over time through relentless pressure. But against Charles, Max is going to be the hunted from the opening bell. Every takedown attempt, every clinch situation, every scramble is going to be life or death for Max. That kind of constant defensive pressure changes fighters, makes them hesitant, makes them second-guess their offensive instincts. Charles is going to turn Max Holloway into a defensive fighter. And defensive Max Holloway is not the Max Holloway who became a legend at featherweight.